It has been nearly a year since a gunman shot his way into Sandy Hook Elementary School and killed 26 people, 20 of them children, before then turning the gun on himself. And while there's been much debate over gun control following the massacre, let's be honest, little has been done to address the core issue nationally. Joining us today to talk about their efforts on this front are two representatives of gun violence prevention organizations. Justin Wagner, an attorney who sits on the board of New Yorkers Against Gun Violence. His organization works to reduce gun violence through both legislative advocacy and education. And also with us is Andy Pelosi, president of gunfreekids.org, which advocates for gun violence prevention policies, also the president of the Campaign to Keep Guns Off Campus. The national project urges colleges and universities to unite in opposing guns on campuses. And I want to thank you both for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, let me first ask the macro question, because I was wrong. After Newtown and after a tone-deaf comment, I think even some of the strongest gun advocates would agree from the NRA in the week that followed it, and then the image of those tiny little white caskets that came out in that unforgettable ceremony in Newtown, we all said, well, maybe not everything will change, but certainly at least background checks, at least some of the minimal things that the overwhelming percentage of American population supports will. Yet we're sitting here nearly a year later, guys, and little, if anything, on the national level really has. Why?
I think more has changed than we think in terms of we haven't had legislation passed necessarily, but in terms of the number of people who have got involved in this issue prior to Sandy Hook, that's changed a lot. I think that that's an important piece that had been missing prior. There was always support, it was latent support. But now I think we have more boots on the ground, if you will, than we had prior to December 14th, 2012.
Were you surprised, though, that after everything, Washington still couldn't pass? I know there were 4 components, but the easiest one, 90% of the general public supported, 3/4 of the NRA supported background checks, universal background checks. That couldn't even get through?
I was a bit surprised, though I wasn't. I hate to be cynical, but I've been working on this issue for 17 years, and I knew that the gun lobby would dig their heels in after this incident, and they dug their heels in, and maybe some took them that say they were going to back off, and they didn't back off. And so what we need to do really now is refocus, and a lot of this is about money, unfortunately. I think is we need to be spending more money when it comes to elections, on candidates that support strong gun laws, and punishing those that don't support. And until the campaign finance laws are changed, this is the area, the arena that we need to be playing more forcefully in.
If I can do a little on the Monday morning quarterbacking about what didn't happen and maybe why. I've heard a few arguments. If you look at New York State, they did pass a pretty comprehensive reform, and many argued it's because they moved quickly on the issue. And they didn't try to build a complete consensus on this because it was never going to be there. Did they wait too long in Washington? Did they try too much? Did the wrong people become the voices for advocacy here? What did we learn about what didn't happen? Because they had public support. That was never in question. And when the polls came out, and there really was a white hat, black hat element of it in terms of when the NRA gave that statement, everybody agreed the next day, oh my God, they don't speak for me. But yet again, nothing. What did they do wrong that the next time we have this argument, whether it be on Capitol Hill or in state capitals, they should do different?
It's a great question. If I can start with what New York did do, because Governor Cuomo pushed through what really is the strongest gun law in the country, the New York SAFE Act. New Yorkers Against Gun Violence, the organization I'm a board member of, was proud to partner with the governor on that. And it's a law that, a lot of confusion about it, but at its core, it strengthens background checks, it eliminates assault weapons from here in New York, it bans those type of high-capacity magazines that have been used in so many of the mass shootings, and then it does other things that folks don't talk about. It stiffens penalties for abusers of domestic violence, makes sure their pistol permit is removed. It strengthens penalties for people who use guns on schools, who use guns against first responders. This is what the SAFE Act does. And while Washington and Albany are often places where common sense goes to die, Governor Cuomo does deserve credit for pushing this through. In terms of lessons learned for Washington, I mean, it's 2 different set of actors. Let's be honest, and they answer to different people. I think what Andy and I have seen is that you have to organize. We were at a rally in Poughkeepsie 2 weeks ago. About 150 mothers came out on a Saturday morning to talk about background checks. And the message we gave them was this cannot be the sum total of what you do on this issue. You have to call your representative. You have to get on Facebook, on Twitter, write letters, be in the newspaper, be active. That's what the other side does, and that's what we need to do. We need to organize and build a movement.
That's a good point to pick up on, which is, I know there are certain people, you guys do this, and you fight this fight every day, but for the general public who doesn't have a direct connection to this, they see the pictures, whether it's in Newtown, whether it's at Virginia Tech, whether it's in Columbine, at a mall, wherever it is, and they feel genuine grief. They may even feel outrage, but then they'll go on with their lives. We have seen, and they believe, and I've heard it, that there's an inevitability that yes, you're going to go through these stages, but nothing's ever going to change. You can point to other causes, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, who changed the narrative. Right. I remember growing up, you know, it used to be jokes in sitcoms where guys would get behind the wheel and say, I drive better drunk. We'd all laugh along with it. Right. That's not a punchline anymore. The same thing to a certain degree with smoking. Why has it been, Andy, that this hasn't changed for guns? And with all due respect to Mayor Bloomberg, who I think has been a fantastic advocate, has put his money where his mouth is he the wrong face for this? Mm-hmm. Should it be somebody else that connects with the American public?
I mean, I think that what Mayor Bloomberg has done in association with all the other mayors is they've really moved the ball forward quite a bit. I don't think that he's looking necessarily to be the face of this. I think that the face of this are grassroots advocates across the country. I don't think that's changed. Where the mayor helps is, Mayor Bloomberg helps is in terms of putting money into this issue. I mean, because I said before, it's an important component. We need to keep people engaged, and it's a difficult thing to do at times because support it waxes and it wanes on this issue. But I think that the real face of this issue is the grassroots folks, and that's really where the focus. People are very focused on Washington. We definitely need to have something happen in Washington, but things are happening in the states. As Justin said, New York passed very strong laws this year. Connecticut passed strong laws. California did. Delaware, states like that. Illinois.
But if I can be a devil's advocate, we cover on this program when you get outside of the East Coast or the West Coast, there are states that are making it legal to bring guns in bars. Right. Bring guns into parks, that are making it easier for kids to carry guns on campuses, teachers to bring guns into classrooms. So for all the advances and legitimate advances that you'll see in places like where we're broadcast, there are parts of the country that are becoming more and more. I mean, I remember that scene, I mean, a chilling scene, where these mothers are getting together, organizing for a rally that you guys are advocating, and you get a bunch of wahoos legally that are having assault weapons with little kids in front of them, standing staring at them through a window in broad daylight in the middle of town. And that's legal in this country. So it seems like there's two Americas on this issue.
And that's why federal action is important. Listen, the state action is very important, but we can pass all the laws we want in New York and other states. But at the end of the day, if gun laws in Virginia and North Carolina are porous, those guns make it to New York because guns don't know about state borders. In fact, our law enforcement tells us 90% of guns recovered in New York City in the commission of crimes come from other states. Statewide, 65% of guns. So we're having this massive trafficking of guns from states outside of New York into New York. So very important issue for the East Coast. What we can do federally is this background check bill. It's low-hanging fruit. And at New Yorkers Against Gun Violence, we're working to make sure the New York congressional delegation is behind it. The lead sponsor is a conservative Republican from Long Island, Peter King. He has a lot of other bipartisan support on the bill. We have two representatives right now in New York who are undecided. And since I'm on this program, if you don't mind, Representative Grimm and Representative Gibson need to hear from their constituents. Polls say 90% of folks support this, but the phone calls they're getting are not 9-1. So we need people to contact their representatives and tell them what they feel. We need laws that reflect our values, but for that to happen, people need to get involved and talk to their representatives.